a Mews Systems podcast.
Hello everyone, it's Marek here, and I would personally like to welcome you to a brand new line of Mews Systems podcast, where we will be discussing some of the current hot topics and trends within the hospitality industry. In today's edition, we would like to welcome Mews' very own founder, Richard Walter, former hotelier who started Mews with the exciting vision of providing a future-thinking property management system. I'm also glad to welcome Mews' very own CEO, Matt Welle, a hotel guru some may say, who previously spent 10 years working at senior levels for Hilton and most notably excelling through their elevator program. And last but certainly not the least, I would like to welcome Mews' commercial director Greg Naidu, former consultant who previously spent 10 years working for a wide range of clientele within the hospitality industry. So, to begin, Matt, we wanted to firstly ask you what you believe are the latest trends and the biggest challenges the industry is experiencing.
So I think in hotels it's been a slow industry to move, and I think when I talk in front of big audiences, I always tell the story of my first experiences in hotels when I was a young boy, and that check-in experience was, it was passports and paying for rooms and getting keys. And then you fast forward 30 years and nothing has really changed intrinsically in our industry. And I think that's the challenge where we sit today, that there's clearly something wrong with the industry, and we're trying to figure out where did it go wrong. That airlines have come up with huge innovations in terms of getting onto the plane, but we in hotels haven't. So I think that's the underlying question.
Yeah, I think for me, when I think about what were some of the driving forces for actually starting Mews, it wasn't just to kind of innovate certain experiences, but actually to kind of bring the idea of hoteliering back to its roots and back to where it really kind of began, which is in the age of concierges, the age of people actually showing another traveller what it is like to actually live in the city. The idea of somebody coming into your home, you looking after them in the best possible way. And I think when you get up from more than one room onto let's say a 100-bedroom hotel or a 1,000-bedroom hotel, that experience, the idea to replicate that becomes very, very difficult unless you have technology working in the background, actually making that possible, making that happen. And I think nowadays people are looking for more and more of those technology-enabled experiences that bring more and more personalization. And I think that's the biggest challenge, and that's the biggest focus for hospitality going forward.
I'd have to say, I'd ask, the question I always ask myself is it safe to be behind the desk? There's always been this need in hotels to be behind this desk, and it's never changed. You have to have that computer, you have to have someone sitting in there, you have to have someone coming to the desk. And that fear of being behind that desk, and rather than having a receptionist come out front and actually talk to people, is where hoteliers have probably not wanted to move things forward, as they felt afraid of actually changing that whole setup. And there's a load of costs that come with it, where people just feel maybe that's not necessary as people expect this. And I guess that's where it all sort of stems from, is the perception, is that we think what we've seen for the last 30 years is okay, and therefore we're not challenging it.
So if you look at those traditional hotels, what would happen if you would actually physically remove the desk? Because this is something that Richard did in his first hotel project. He actually said, I'm going to remove that reception desk and we'll see what happens. So what in your opinion would happen in that case?
Lovely space for a couch would be the first one, and a nice coffee table. But no, I think what would happen is people would walk through the door. There should be a host standing waiting for you. I'd love someone waiting with a glass of champagne. That would be amazing. Someone to sit down as if you're welcome. My friends come to my house. I don't make them stand at the door and ask them questions. I bring them in and I ask them, would you like something to drink? Come sit down. Isn't that the same hospitality that should happen with the guests?
True. Yeah, and I think that's hospitality, and that's what should happen. But what happens in the back office? Because now suddenly you've removed all systems from that experience. So will that break everything in the hotel back office?
I don't think it'll break everything. I think people would be a little bit bewildered on what to actually do. So a reception firstly, and I put myself in those shoes of being that person now sitting on that couch, I feel unprotected because I don't have a desk in front of me. Like I'm completely 100% visible to the customer. And what am I hiding behind? An iPad? And I'm scared naturally because I'm like, you can see everything that I'm doing physically. You can see me entering your name. You can see me bringing up your reg card on the iPad.
And something we did in hotels was like, difficult customer we put on profiles, and like surely you can't do that on iPad because they're looking over your shoulder, so you have to find different ways of doing
it. And I lean over and you blacklisted me, and I am arriving.
So Richard, so you implemented kind of a hotel without a reception desk, and as you were building that hotel, you removed the reception, but what were some of the challenges that you then encountered in terms of system setup?
I think that kind of the nowhere to hide aspect of it, because I think people do have a tendency when they work at hotels, they have a tendency to hide, so they just find new hiding spaces. So instead of being behind the reception desk, there's always somebody playing around with papers, something that needs to be sorted in the back office or for the preparation for the accountants. And people just find tasks to do because the idea of standing, talking, creating an experience for somebody actually arriving, I mean, that's a really scary thought for most people. I think the three of us or the four of us are really quite hospitable people, and we love the idea of meeting new people and having those new experiences. But I think it does take quite a lot of training and quite a lot of exposure to that to actually bring that up within yourself. I think the other thing as well is the tendency to go back to ways that people understand. So, a lot of the times, I think in the initial phase, there was so much excitement, but as those people kind of then went on to do other projects, which is totally natural in the hospitality industry, just the level of turnover, then the new people coming in just couldn't get their heads around it, and there were fewer people right from the beginning who were pushing the same kind of agenda. So people were like, well, we should probably have this because this is what I've encountered in another hotel. And so I think it requires a kind of constant change of mind, constant almost retraining and reprogramming into what the hotelier of the 21st century should actually be.
So I want to add, because there's actually quite a lot of interesting things you said there, right? So the one word I'd sum up for a reception desk is this dependency to rely on the things around you. The stapler, the calculator in case I incorrectly calculated the guest, a stack of all the receipts from the spa to the restaurant to, I don't know, wherever else in this resort you've been to. And it's not having all those things physically around you to grab it in case you need it. But I asked myself, why do you need it? I stayed at a hotel and I said I need all the dockets from the restaurant, from the spa. And she brought a pack that was probably as big as the Yellow Pages. And I said to her, no, I need that for my accounting and stuff. And then she starts photocopying everything and giving me like A3 photocopies. And I said, and this is obviously a big chain, and I was just blown away. But the point I'm trying to make is, why would you not, those dependency of having a calculator in case you made a mistake or the program said it was incorrect and it didn't calculate the city tax and now you're having to work it out. There's no need for that. The system should automatically do all of this. And with all these dockets, why not just press send via email? I just don't get it.
So these are a real lot of challenges and a lot of positive challenges. But how do you then enable hotels to adjust to these challenges? How do you make them to implement? Because as you said, there's a lot of unwillingness from maybe the staff. They feel insecure about these things. So how do you enable them to proceed with this?
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of unwillingness, which is mostly coming from fear of change because we've always done it this way. And it requires a leader, someone who comes in who has a vision behind what he believes that hotel needs to represent to their customers. And it is, in the end, about the customer. It isn't about you being comfortable with behind a reception desk. There needs to be a visionary in the hotel who says, I want to create this new vision, so we're going to remove the reception desk. So logically, a legacy system that sits on a local server that isn't mobile is not going to work for me. And then that leader needs to go out and actually figure out, is there another system solution on the market? And this is where Richard and I started when we opened the Emblem Hotel. We reached out to the industry leaders, some of the dinosaurs that are holding hostage of this 4 and 5 star segment. And then we're like, well, can you put your system on an iPad? And, they laughed at us. And then you start looking for cloud solutions that are mobile optimized. And you find that, that has never been a focus for them. They've always focused on, being behind the reception desk and creating features there, but mobile optimization wasn't critical. But surprise, surprise, the customers are all mobile. 90% of our travelers come in with their mobile phone. So why can't they check themselves in, like with an airline, for example? And I think that's where Richard and I really started thinking, okay, rather than just building a cool app that sits on some legacy system, we need to revamp that kind of property management in the backbone and really focus on mobile optimization.
Yeah, because if you think about it, one of the things that's broken within hotels is the entire model of what you're actually doing. So the idea that you're only supposed to service that customer from the moment that they arrive up until the moment that they leave, I think that's something that, for example, the OTAs have figured out. That's not just your window. Your window is from the moment that the person signals interest that they would like to come to your property till the moment that they're thinking about coming back. That's your window. It's not just those 2 days that they're actually staying in your hotel. And that's something that hoteliers have to start thinking about, and have to start thinking about, creating an online space for somebody else to be able to interact with them on a constant basis. And that's the beauty of the cloud, is the fact that you have a constantly virtual presence for somebody to come back to. You have a home that they can check into at any point. That's the idea of putting your solution, your back-end solution in the cloud, means that you're always there, you're always available for that guest.
I think the thing to add is like the customer, right? And going back to what the original question was, is why has the hotel industry sort of not moved forward, has the customer not become that demanding that we have to react just yet? That's what's kind of happening, right? Our customers aren't asking us. So the small percentage of millennials, or maybe large percentage of millennials now coming into hotels, is only going to get bigger. And what my dad and mom may have been used to with getting a stack of bills on departure is not what a millennial is going to expect. And because that wave of the millennials hasn't really hit, and that's going to happen probably in the next, 10 to 15 years when that generation starts really staying at some of the best hotels, is that you're going to see them being demanding, and it'll be too late because we had the window to change and we didn't change in time.
Yeah, and I think you saw this in airlines, right? So initially they came in with an online check-in, and in the beginning I was like, oh, that's such a hassle, and I still printed out everything myself. But slowly, because the check-in experience became better and better, it became a minimum requirement for other airlines to offer that online check-in as well. And I think in hotels, because 99% of hotels still don't have an online check-in, we've educated the customer that nothing like that exists, so they're still fine with it. But the moment 25% of those hotels move to an online check-in, suddenly the customer's like, okay, that's amazing. So they kind of start demanding that from other hotels who are still in the dark ages, effectively. And I think at some point that customer will see, okay, it is possible, it's just this hotel hasn't invested in that technology. And I think the customer at some point will start to push the hotels to innovate, but I think it's still too early because there's just no one else who's doing it currently.
But I think these kinds of things happen incredibly quickly. I think there's one of my favorite Louis C.K. sketches is about people getting Wi-Fi on the internet, on an airplane. And just everyone kind of going up in arms about the fact that it's not working. But I think that's what essentially happens with technology, is that you didn't know that you needed that functionality before, but once you've had it, once you've experienced it, you start expecting it everywhere. And I think that's something that happens, and I think that that rate of change that you guys have mentioned, I think that'll come incredibly quickly. Once you've stayed at a hotel where you can just text any kind of request to a concierge and order directly from, let's say, that messaging platform, you'll find every single other hotel that doesn't enable that incredibly slow. You'll find every single hotel system that doesn't enable that incredibly backward. And the idea that your needs and requests won't be met in a real-time fashion, I think that's something where people will be like, oh my God, like, why is this hotel so stuck in the 20th century?
And we talk about hotels, and I know we say, but we actually have hostels, and we have some really cool, trendy hostels across the world that are with us. And the thing is, they have seen the light already, probably about, 2 years ago, where they've already started looking for this sort of technology, and which is why we have a big portfolio of hostels. But because their demand of their clientele, being in their mid-20s, staying in hostels, traveling across the world, Europe, wherever, are already using that technology of online check-in. So they're seeing the demand of that already happening in their industry. But hoteliers haven't seen, maybe because of the demographics that they currently have in their resorts, villas, B&Bs and so forth.
Yeah. But I actually think that demographic argument is baloney. Like I think it's I think it probably counted 10 years ago when people like my father wouldn't have been able to check in online, but now he can do just the same amount of things as I can, and the whole idea of one of the things that I think we had to do as well as a system is think about the UX, the user experience, and everyone is thinking about this on the internet, and so these processes become incredibly easy. It's very, very easy for somebody to check in online, and increasingly so. And I think the same thing should be happening with all of your systems, with everything that's happening in your hotel. You should be able to create new reservations very, very quickly. You should be able to check in people very, very quickly. You should be able to find people very, very quickly. All of these things should be much, much quicker and almost real time.
So, agreed. So, my dad is turning 70 and he just got an iPhone and he's over the moon, right? I get WhatsApp messages from him every morning of some meme that someone created and circulated. The point I was trying to make is, earlier I said that the hoteliers haven't felt the demand from the customer coming, wanting these sort of technology requests like online check-in, mobile keys and stuff. But hostels see it every single day because of the demographic that's staying at their hostels. And one would actually argue that hostels don't have a younger demographic anymore. That's actually changing. It's now actually a lot of older people, that families are staying in hostels. So even they too are putting demand on hostels or hotels asking for that sort of technology.
Guys, you've been talking a lot about the customer experience point of view, which is pretty cool, and we all as end users or guests in the hotels can appreciate these things. But what does this actually mean in the hotel's perspective from the back office term? Because this for us, it's amazing, but for the hotel, this is something that they need to face with, and they're probably scared of that. So what is that they need to do, or how do they make this change? So
look at the industry today. So I think, and it's an estimate, right? So probably 90% of hotels still sit on legacy local server-based solutions, and traditionally you buy the PMS, the POS, the EMS, all from one vendor, and they're all not best in class, but because they have everything, you took it. But connecting to other kind of companies who are best in class, so for example, if you wanted a different event management system or a point of sale, that's extremely difficult because they don't have open networks. And I think what the cloud provides is the ability to say, okay, in the property management system, we're best in class, but we have an open API, which allows other cloud systems to easily integrate into it. So we started organizing an event, and I was like, okay, let's reach out to a few of our partners who are integrated. And at some point, we had about 14 different partners who are all in unique verticals who had just integrated into our system because it's so easy, right? So we put an open API out, and there's enough startups that would like to have a simple app on top of our, not everyone wants to build a PMS, which is extremely complex. But if you do an upselling app or a housekeeping app, you just need to get some data from the PMS, and if you try and talk to local server-based systems, that's really difficult. But if you go to the cloud partners, everyone has an API, and integrating is made really easily. So as a hotelier, the moment you say, hey, I want to improve my housekeeping because I see that the waiting times for rooms, it's too long, so I want an app. So you go to an app provider. They plug into the PMS, they take the data out. If you like the app, that's great. But if you don't like it, you just switch it off and move to the next one. previously you would have had made this decision and the integration would have taken 6 months to get it live, and then you'd have to sit on that app, that housekeeping app, for the next 10 years to get a return on investment on it. And the cloud enables you to just try it out for 30 days, you switch it back off if you don't like it, or you stay with that solution for the next 10 years if the solution is great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things where you go to a lot of conferences and everyone's always griping about the slowness of change within the hospitality industry. And I think that's really the main contributing factor, is that if you look at all other industry verticals, there are usually systems that have open APIs that make connectivity really, really easy. And you just don't really seem to have that in the hospitality space. And even if you do have APIs, they're still kind of working on hybrid systems, not fully cloud systems, which make that kind of connectivity not real time. And if you're talking about, for example, housekeeping apps or any kind of service delivery apps, that's where that kind of real-time element becomes absolutely crucial. And that's why it's so necessary to have a cloud-based system that's just passing through that information through APIs in real time. And I think that really is one of the things that's holding back the innovation, because we see, and we're really surprised at how many different companies are crawling out of the woodwork, how many different young innovators are really trying to connect to us, and they're like, wow, like, you guys make it so easy for us to actually connect with you. And I think that's one thing that we've been surprised, is how many young startups there are working in this space. And it's great to see that there's so much diversity and so much dynamism in this area as well.
But I think there's a proportion of hoteliers that don't understand cloud, right? It's something that's happened, but nobody sort of explained it. So we were using probably cloud solutions that didn't even realize we were using cloud solutions. And I think that's probably the biggest part is, do they really understand the difference of it, right? That all these network cables and all of these things that have ports, like I still go into hotels and there's a broadband plug-in point by the desk, and I'm like, what do I do with it? But the thing is, the hoteliers haven't got to that point. And I guess being a hotelier myself is that when I had to migrate my whole self to the cloud, all my files from my local desktop, all my personal photos, everything had to move. I then understood actually that it became so much more easier. And I think what we're trying to do also is educate people that cloud really isn't that complex. It's actually really straightforward. It's just moving onto the cloud and getting your hotel up and running within a matter of days. And I guess that's probably the biggest starting point that we're trying to do, is to explain people that cloud should not be expensive and should be quick and easy to set up.
Yeah, so if you look at a hotel with a local server, because it's local, that means that no one can connect to it unless you have access to the hotel network. So that means that if you want an integration, that has to get installed on the local network, or you have to install some app locally that connects to it. Where the cloud comes in, it sits on the internet. So really, anyone who we allow to connect to it can connect to it. So it's not just integration partners. Something we realized early on is like, hey, shit, guests can access it as well. Because why doesn't the guest update his own profile? Why doesn't he upload his own credit card or send a bill to himself from his own profile? And that's really what we try to do now, getting the guests to access the hotel. Because if you think about the checkout experience you get in hotels, it's like, oh, I've got a plane to catch. You're waiting in a queue and there's some person in front of you who's being really difficult. But you have to get your bill because you have to submit that to your accounting. So what if I can go online and actually, change my billing address and send the bill to myself? That's amazing, because it changes the guest experience, and they don't have to rush to the airport. They really can do it at their own leisure. And I think that's, getting the guests to connect to your hotel system, that's where the real innovation will come in the future.
Yeah, and I think if you're thinking about, where all of this is going, it's really a completely brave new world if you think about it, because it does completely change the way that you start seeing a hotel. I think when we first started, one of the ways that we always thought about the hotel is that actually a hotel is a real life homepage to an entire city. You arrive there, somebody takes care of you, somebody actually looks at what you want to be experiencing in that city. and then takes care of you from that moment on. And you basically see the hotel as the thing that's defining that entire kind of experience. And I think that if you think about all the different services that you could integrate into that, so that's tours, you could think about any kind of business workspaces, anything that you want to kind of connect to while you're actually on that trip, even if it's business or leisure, that should all be coming into the PMS, and that should all be feeding in to the guest, so that they can see that directly from their kind of trusted resource, which is basically the hotel in this.
I want to touch on, Matt's actually made a really good point about the access of your information and customizing it to what you want, right? I take the airline industry again. I like, if something is incorrect on my profile, I would log in to BA, I would change everything, I would update it. I need to change my flight, I pick a new date, it charges me an extra £20, I change my flight, I then get reissued a new ticket. I don't have any sort of human intervention whatsoever. Everything I've done completely on my own. And even if I wanted to upgrade my flight, which I would love the two of you to let me do soon, but you could even do that on the app as well. And why should we not allow our hotel customers to do exactly the same? And I take other e-commerce platforms, so almost every e-commerce platform, if you wanted to change something from delivery address to your own billing address, your own credit card details, you just log in now. From my Amazon account, I could do it in seconds. While I'm on the go, sitting on the train, why should a customer not experience that same thing in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, because I think one of the things that we do so badly as hoteliers is that we essentially get the customer to ask us for permission to do these kinds of changes, and they should be fully within their own purview. And if there's some kind of, I think one of the things as well is that we're super afraid to charge for anything because of the fact that we have this kind of personal connection to that customer. Whereas if I'm changing a flight online, I have no problems basically paying another 10, 20 pounds, because I know that that's basically the price. If I'm doing it with somebody, I'm always trying to get them to actually go maybe a little bit lower. I'm maybe seeing that it's, but it's actually, I should be getting this kind of thing because I'm a frequent customer or something like that. Once you actually put it online, people are much more willing to actually spend that extra money, because they see it as a kind of, it's an impartial resource that you can't really argue with.
So I received an email yesterday from one of the hotel owners who'd been wanting to improve his team in upselling skills, but that means a lot of training into his team. So I said, well, why don't you just have this upselling application integrated so that it automates that flow? And he just wrote me, he's like, we just raised revenue by €4,000 last month because of you just mentioning this company that we just set up in 5 minutes. We started a workflow and just money started coming in, because every customer was targeted with an offer targeted to them. If they're leisure or business, there's different offers that you can send. And he just wrote me, and I was like, oh, that's so nice that he actually wrote me that. But clearly we've just brought him €4,000 in revenue just by switching on an app that doesn't cost that much.
So people may be listening to this and going, well, we're actually becoming a non-hospitality connected, everybody wants this, call us, let us talk to you, because I listened to both of you and you're like, we're not even going to be talking to any of our customers anymore. So it strips hospitality. So the thing I would say actually is, there's two sides to all our customers. There's customers that want that connection with you, and there's customers that don't want that and just want to be free to do it on their own and do their own thing. And people make this, whenever I am talking about Mews, people always say, well, the technology is obviously going to detach the hotel staff from the customer, and I'll be absolutely not. And I always ask, what proof do you have that this would happen? And of course, we've got X amount of properties live with us using it, and it's, if anything, it's gotten better rather than what people envisage it to be. And I think the thing I'd say about that is, like, when I take it to the airlines and you change a flight, and Richard said something really good, if you called the hotel and asked them to cancel and you were within the cancellation policy, the reception team manager would probably go, it's okay, we'll waive it, it's fine, but don't do it again. and that's lost revenue. If I call an airline, they'll be like, go online and follow the prompts, and whatever it tells you, that's what you're going to get stuck with. And usually there's a cancellation fee and you can't get out of it.
But if you add up, so sometimes I do this exercise, and one of the hotels like, I don't want you to have these cancellation fees. I'm like, okay, let's do an exercise a month later and seeing how much money you've just waived, which is pure profit, right? That customer is not like using the shampoos in your rooms and the sheets. So any cancellation fee you waive, that's a loss of 100% profit to the hotel effectively. So I think it's good sometimes to take a report and look back saying, what's the human factor into my profitability.
I love that. That's a good one.
Yeah, but like I think to your point as well, Greg, like you shouldn't just think about it as the technology taking over the hotel. It's also technology enabling your staff to actually do more. So like unfortunately we're not always going to be blessed with the most empathetic people who can just see the person coming through the door and just go like, oh my god, this person definitely wants this kind of experience in my city, or this person, I can upsell him this particular product. So a lot of the time the technology can actually help your staff actually be prepared for the people that are coming in through the door. And in that way you can actually just make sure that you have that information in front of you. And then, then come the kind of those moments that, for example, you see on the internet because they get retweeted 20,000 times. But it's just, where a company has been able to really kind of go above and beyond because they've used some piece of information. So it's, usually the case is somebody tweeting at Amazon, somebody tweeting at an airline or something like that, like, hey, couldn't you make this possible? And they do it, and there's a huge reaction basically from the fact that somebody can pick it up online, go above and beyond their normal call of duty and actually deliver an experience that the customer's really not expecting. And I think that's something that's the exciting part of technology. It's not about basically just the...
And I think you can usually see that, right? Like, you typically... your corporate guests, for example, they're not the ones that want to be interactive. They're not going to be, show me a map, let me go out to the city and see everything. All I want is my burger delivered into my room the moment I get to the hotel. I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to go to bed. I've got to get up early. Make sure the iron is there and the ironing board so I can get my shirt pressed. Like, there isn't no time. And these sort of things with an online check-in, people automatically... can pre-prepare for your arrival. So yes, it's a lot quicker for you to do things. No, I do agree with you. And I think the main thing for me is like the hoteliers, by not taking this leap forward in technology, is making an assumption that their business will probably not evolve and maybe, I don't know, stagnate, whatever they may think, and nothing would really change. But in my opinion, I think not taking the chance and not knowing the real potential it would bring is probably more of their downfall than anything else.
So that rounds up this week's edition of Mews Podcasts. I would just like to say a massive thank you to Richard, Matt and Greg for their time today, and thank you all for listening. Join us again soon, where we will be further discussing some of the latest hot topics and trends within the hospitality industry. Have a great week, take care, and goodbye.
A Mews Systems podcast.